Man, this guy's bristling with technology, look at him.
The Colne, as far as the small riverside town of Wivenhoe, is all birds and mud and saltings. The first sign of change is the sand wharf, just on the seaward side of the tidal barrier, and on the opposite bank to the town. Earlier in my journey I'd seen barge loads of Essex sand coming up the Thames towards London. From Google Earth you can see that it is still a sizable operation. It's home to a small fleet of sand barges, so down to earth the sturdy craft are named after the menfolk of the proprietor's family. Perhaps the women prefer not to have their names attached to such lump and sturdy vessels. The Colne was once a busy commercial river with wharfs right along its upper reaches, but this is the last dockside crane on the estuary. As an amateur student of industrial history, it's lovely to have seen it working. There's pleasure to be had from watching big machinery in operation. There's nothing hidden about a crane, honest in its functional transparency. And to see the way the operator flies the bucket smoothly and efficiently through the air. Great skills.
These are our coastal defences. Basically they're beefing up the sea walls, and down here they put this barrage to reduce the water flow.
The front at Wivenhoe used to flood during spring tides, but the barrier has stopped all that from happening. The town is famous for being the epicentre of the UK's largest recorded earthquake in 1884. 1,200 buildings in Essex were damaged, one child died just across the river in the neighbouring town of Rowhedge. What a splendidly safe country I live in. The riverfront and old town behind it is wonderful. The industrial area of wharves and warehouses has now all gone and been replaced with a well-designed development of terraced cottages and slightly austere-looking buildings designed to replicate the look of the original waterfront. But down at the lower end of town they're digging a small marina and have thrown up some pretty disgusting-looking buildings. Too much glass, too many balconies, wrong colour. But that aside, a good job well done. Then comes Rowhedge. The place has always had far too many pubs of the size of the population, and at one time Rowhedge was regarded as an utter den of iniquity. Wivenhovians will still tell you today that there's still something weird about the place. Rowhedgians were notorious pirates and smugglers. Near a crossroads just outside the village there's an oak tree that grew from an acorn that sprouted in the eye socket of a hanged pirate, one of many convicted felons from the town. At one time hardly a drop of brandy served over the bars in the pubs was duty paid, and the hostelries were notorious for the largesse of their loose women. They used to wave at passing sailors. Some still do. Even today the village has more pubs than it really needs, but it does hold one of the best river regattas on the east coast, where excessive quantities of alcohol are consumed. Then comes a lovely row of mud berths with a classically eclectic collection of small craft, including one of the ugliest trailer sailors ever designed, a sailfish. But who am I to talk about boat aesthetics? Rowhedge is followed by a lovely stretch of river that leads across Saltmarsh grassland. Wivenhoe Park, now the site of the University of Essex, was painted by Constable, and jolly good it looked too. You can see the old wharfs which used to line its banks. Colchester. Its main claim to fame is that it's Britain's oldest recorded town, for whatever that's worth. It was a Roman stronghold, and Boadicea, or Boudica, as we're all supposed to call her now, sacked the place. It's still got large chunks of its old Roman walls, which obviously didn't deter Britain's second most important female warmonger. The wharf is currently the home of a few houseboats and a Sea Scout headquarters in an old light vessel. Sadly, some balcony-dominated monstrosities have been thrown up along one bank, and there are plans for even more on the other side. There's a massive sewage outfall. Smells really bad at low tide. I think towns have grown too big and too old once they lose control of their own bowels and dump smelly effluvia over their riverine doorsteps. Then comes the lovely part of any river journey, picking up the first of the ebb on the retreat back to the sea. The high water makes Wivenhoe look even more idyllic. How marvellous it must be to live in a town on a tidal estuary. There's the sailfish.
This will tell you what a dyed-in-the-wool dinghy sailor I am. My son's got one of those. The first boat we had after the kids were born was a mirror. The thing with the bell is a GP14. I built one of those. An Enterprise, I've owned one of those. Yeah, very traditional. And there's a barge full of bird watchers there. In Britain, people go bird watching from an old Thames barge. It's pretty good, isn't it?